In what ways can students be collaborators in higher education? Well, I think there are all sorts of different ways, and there are lots of different approaches that you might hear about today, and that plenty of different universities can tell you plenty of different things that they're doing. But some of the things that I think are interesting, and I think you can split this into two strands. I think you can look at some of the strategic institutional ways and the sector-wide ways in which you can try and involve students. And then there's engaging students in their disciplines and in their subjects. So I think there are two separate strands to look at this. And when it comes to the more strategic institutional level and sector-wide things, I think first of all, one of the more consumerist approaches perhaps is mass feedback and evaluation. So you all get your evaluation forms, national student survey and so on, and that's fine. I think it's good to gather that feedback from students and for them to have an opportunity to say what went well, what didn't go so well, and give some feedback on whether they were satisfied or not, and for them to be responsive to that. But I think you need to build a bit more onto that. If you're going to have a genuine collaborative or partnership approach, creating community of learning with students, I think you need to empower students a bit more. If students are just pure consumers, then they're just going to have, in a sense, you're disempowering them, because all they've got is the opportunity to complain when things go wrong. They haven't got opportunities to shape the direction of their own learning and to shape the direction of the environment in which they're learning. So I think there are lots of different things you can do. You can involve students in consultations. If you are wanting to change something in an institution, involve students from the very outset. And don't just ask them what they think. Can't you involve students to lead some of those projects? Why can't students be leading these reviews, organising the focus groups, perhaps if you're going to organising the consultation, leading the discussions, perhaps chairing review panels and so on as they're going to be going through that process. Why not empower the students, sending a strong message and giving a students a chance to lead that? And then the second thing following on from that is when you've agreed what the change is going to be, why not empower the students to deliver some of that change? Now, universities for years have employed students to work perhaps in catering outlets and bars and so on like that. That's great, give students part-time work, no problem with that. But why not engage students to be delivering some of the other areas of work in education? I think that's where it links across to the other strand I was talking about, which is engaging students in their disciplines. And there's some really interesting work going on in here as well. And I think this is where you're giving students a chance to engage really passionately in the subject. They've come to university to study for a reason. They've come to study a particular subject, hopefully because they're passionate about it, they want to learn about it, they want to develop their knowledge in that subject to help their future prospects. So give them a chance to contribute to the development of the curriculum in that area. Give them the freedom to explore that subject, and that's going back to some of the assessment issues we were talking about this morning. What are the boundaries that are being applied, and what freedom are you giving students? And some of the really interesting, when I came up yesterday and went to talk to the Learning and Teaching Office at the University of Manchester, and they're doing some really innovative things with their students. The peer mentoring schemes, the peer assisted learning that's going on here, I think that's really, really helpful, and I think that they've just been awarded a UK Centre status by the International Supplemental Instruction body. I'm not entirely sure what its proper title is, but I would really encourage you to find out what they're doing, because looking at the results of what's going on there is where students are engaged to provide peer support and to be discussing in a constructive way with their fellow students. The achievements are improved, satisfaction is improving, the students' knowledge of their own subjects is improving. It's just, and of course it's much cheaper than perhaps some of the other ways in which you could do it. So that perhaps that's looking at it from a different perspective, how you could sell this to institutions. But it's just win-win-win. Sorry, I know I've gone on for too long.
Who I believe himself is.
Yeah, that was quite comprehensive.
Sorry.
No, it was very good actually, because there's a couple of things that you mentioned that I'm quite like to pick up on. The idea of national surveys as a way of gaining feedback from students, again, I feel for a number of us actually is a sense, again, disempowering, because we all come from such varied faculties, have such varied experiences of university, that you don't really feel that the results of a national survey where, maybe 5% of your university will respond will be particularly representative and will therefore result in change. I think what you said about having a more more grassroots level of student engagement, I think that's the most effective element of engaging with students as collaborators. And in terms of what I think a collaborator is, I think it's departments making use of their students. There's a saying that that is often used, which is sort of by students for students, when we're referring to peer assisted learning. Now, as a resource, I think students are fantastic. I recently attended a conference, an international conference in Portugal, where the entire event, which spanned a number of days, was completely run by students. This university in Portugal had completely embraced their engagement with students and said, you know, you're here, you're gaining an excellent degree. We should be entrusting you with providing, these kind of services for other students and also to staff. And they did a wonderful job of it. I think that what we're seeing a lot of at the moment is universities saying that they really do trust their students, they really do want to engage with them, but then they limit sort of the involvement which they can have within their particular faculties or the university as a whole. So I think therefore it's very right in saying that within a departmental structure and also the wider university body, students need to be engaged more and entrusted with having a more active role in determining change within courses, delivering change, and also providing feedback at a more grassroots level for individual courses. Then one final example of that I actually wanted to draw upon was I recently received an email which was informing students of the panel that would be set out in the School of Medicine to determine the changes that will take place throughout our curriculum. Now, this panel consisted of 2 student representatives from, I believe, 2 year groups. The School of Medicine has over 2,500 students, and in this panel, they're engaging with only 2 students, of which they only form from 2 years. And I feel that, again, sends out a message that we're not really listening to students, that their opinion doesn't necessarily matter as much as the individuals who are high up in the institution and effecting change. So I think the real message is throughout the university, students need to be engaged with more and need to be given a lot more responsibility in terms of making real change within their courses. Something that might be followed on, I'll just flag it up. I'm very positive about collaboration. I think students should always be involved in delivering education and determining how it should affect them and how it should affect students that follow them. One area that I must admit that has to be considered as well from the university point of view is that they are trying to provide students with a quality education which will be sought after by employers and will also be sought after, for example, for professional bodies such as like the General Medical Council, in terms of dentist authorities, very vocational courses. There are national bodies that are in place which also monitor the type of curriculum that's being delivered by universities. So whilst it's very important that students have a direct say in what it is they'll be doing day to day, one must also consider the sort of syllabus that university has to provide and making sure that that students do stick to that when they're sort of designing their own courses.